I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. During Lucy Letby's trial, the prosecutor, Nick Johnson, asked her to read a text message out loud. It was her response to Dr. A sending her a message ending with a large red heart emoji. The prosecutor had to prompt Lucy twice before Lucy finally said, "It's a heart." According to the Daily Mail, quote, Letby had responded to the doctor's love heart with one of her own, combined with a smiling face emoji. "It's a smiley face and a heart," she said. Mr. Johnson asked, "But he wasn't your boyfriend?" Letby replied, "It's not a relationship at all. It's a friendship." The key to understanding Lucy Letby's psychology, her motivations, and her motives lies within her heart, and what these symbols, these heart-shaped emojis, really meant to her. Where did her treasure lie, or more particularly, with whom? The prosecutor, Johnson, went on to refer to a note in which Lucy tells herself that she's an awful person and laments the likelihood that, she says, "I'll never know what it's like to have a family." According to the article, the barrister asked, "What made you think at the time you wrote this that you would never have a family?" I would love to know her response to that, and I would really have loved to have seen how she responded to this question. In any event, the trial heard no further evidence about this apparent relationship, and it's not clear how long it lasted or who the boyfriend was. The Daily Mail goes on to say it was probably or possibly a figment of Lucy's imagination, this boyfriend. Because the nurse is not known to have shared any romantic relationships, with one mother of a close friend saying there were no boyfriends, well, not that I knew of anyway. So does this mean Lucy is an incel, an involuntarily celibate person? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. But bear in mind, I've actually written a book on incels. I'll put a link to that in the description. Certainly on paper, Lucy's extreme behavior, coupled with her apparent inability to land herself in a sustainable romantic relationship, perhaps ever, suggests that she meets this criteria. But we're going to deal with that in more detail. I'm also going to be following this up with a broader introduction to the whole idea of identity, which is such an important tool in the true crime toolbox, specifically the way we deal with cases on this channel, in my books, in the True Crime Rocket Science community. So I really recommend that you check that out. Take out your notebooks as well when we do look at that. That'll be in a episode coming up later today or at the latest tomorrow. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So you can also imagine, as we saw with Rex Heuermann, whenever there's a sexual urge that cannot be fulfilled, it seems someone has to die so that this person, either Lucy Letby or potentially Rex Heuermann, is what is happening. They are trying to manipulate their way towards some sort of twisted satisfaction. But why do they need to do that? Why do they have to resort to these things, these twisted and extreme efforts? And so it does raise the question, is it possible to have good relationships with family, to have a few good friends, and still be lonely? What do you think? Well, let's apply it to Lucy. Was Lucy lonely? And some people have made an interesting argument that she seems to have been quite socialized. She seemed to be going out quite often, and she's got supposedly a loving family around her. So isn't she a normal person? But there's got to be something wrong here. So let me ask that question again. Is it possible to have good relationships with family, to have a few good friends and still be lonely? And then, was Lucy lonely? What do you think? Do you think Lucy was lonely? Because acute loneliness in a romantic sense is very much the remote and rural heartland of the incel. And so if we answer the question, yes, she was lonely, but lonely in a relationship sense, then we are going into the territory of the incel. Then we've got to start saying, well, wasn't Lucy an incel? What does that tell us? Now, according to BirminghamLive.com, Lucy referred to Dr. A as sweetie in messages. She told how their relationship fizzled out at the start of 2018. The killer appeared visibly distressed when the man appeared in court, that's Dr. A, to give evidence against her. She even attempted to leave the dock, claiming to feel unwell. But the prosecutor, Nick Johnson, said, no, it's because you didn't like hearing your boyfriend giving evidence, did you? In social media messages, Letby told the medic he was a man of many talents. On her first day back at work, following a holiday in Ibiza, she wrote boo when she learned that he would not be there working with her. Well, later that day, child O collapsed and Letby called for Dr. A's help. Now, if we accept that Lucy was distressing babies in her care, even killing them, simply to get Dr. A's attention, then what it shows is a kind of acknowledgement that on her own, just as she is, she didn't feel strong enough or valid enough to get Dr. A's attention. It doesn't really matter what you think of Lucy's appearance, what you think of her as a person or whatever. The most important thing here is what she thinks, her sense of her own identity, and that definitely comes into, it becomes relevant. It sort of comes onto stage, comes into the spotlight when you're a young person wanting to find love. This is all about your true sexual power, your true ability to, your true agency in terms of other people. And so that also then raises this question, why was she so desperate for Dr. A's attention? Why would someone be desperate for attention? Well, wasn't it because she was starved of a particular kind of attention? In my experience, yes, it is very possible to have friends around you, to have family around you, and still pine desperately for intimacy in the romantic sense. Back to the article from Birmingham Live, Prosecutor Johnson asked her, did you want to get his attention? Is that the reason you sabotaged child O? But she denied this. And then child P collapsed the next day when Letby was on duty. Again, Dr. A responded to the emergency crash call. Johnson asked her then as well, did you enjoy being in these crisis situations with Dr. A? Did it give you something to talk about and message about? Letby again said no. Dr. A and I were friends. But it does seem that Lucy did enjoy these encounters. It did seem like a pattern that whenever you had this crisis, there was the aftermath of them engaging with one another online, talking to one another directly. In some cases, the doctor driving her home, the doctor trying to emotionally comfort her. And so I think she did enjoy these encounters, and I think it's true that she did have special feelings towards the married. Dr. E does emerge as a special person within this kind of community of nurses and doctors. Back to the article, Letby sought reassurance from Dr. A when another medic raised concerns after a baby fell ill. Dr. A messaged her saying, no more doubt, it is not you, it is the babies. He went on to say, you are one of a few nurses in the region, and I've worked pretty much everywhere, that I would trust with my own children. Police then found a note in her home with the name of Dr. A and the phrases, my best friend, love. I loved you, and I think you knew that. I trusted you with everything, I wanted you to stand by me, but you didn't. And one wonders how much truth is in that statement. I wanted you to stand by me, but you didn't. What is the actual truth in terms of those words? These notes also seem to attempt to manipulate one into believing there was no consummation of their feelings. But if that were the case, I'm not sure why we're referring to Dr. A as Dr. A, or why he felt the need to testify anonymously in court behind a screen. On the other hand, if there was no consummation, but there was nevertheless some sort of unrequited sexual tension, which rose whenever Lucy flicked a switch, summoning an otherwise unavailable and perhaps somewhat reluctant suitor, then that could also explain why Lucy had to keep killing. Does that make sense? If the doctor gave in and they were ultimately voluntarily in a consensual relationship, would there still be any need to press buttons? So to answer the question, I think Lucy meets several of the criteria of INCELS, including and especially this self-defining statement of, I'll never know what it's like to have a family. Consider what we're dealing with: a spoiled single child, a child coddled by her parents, a child led to believe she's special and exceptional, except in the real world she's treated as beige. She has a perception mirrored by those around her that she's not that special and that she can't get what she wants. In her home and her bedroom, she's got a Disney fairy tale view of the world as quite simplistic, while at work she's exposed to a more complicated situation where she's not so special after all. There are also younger and more beautiful nurses one imagines around her. And then what she does with the situation is that she surreptitiously puts babies' lives in jeopardy, and she finds that this brings the doctors running and makes her the center of a crisis. This is how she addressed her lack of power. This is how she gains power in terms of that situation. So the one criteria Lucy doesn't meet, in my mind, is that male incels typically congregate anonymously in groups and engage in extremely negative, self-defeating discussions online. Well, Lucy didn't appear to do that, but her post-its come pretty close. She did obviously engage with this doctor online. By the way, we'll be dealing in more detail with this concept of identity in a separate episode, so look out for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.